Without further ado, though, let's welcome in for the first visit of the 2021 calendar year, Mr. Steve Laffey, filmmaker, author, former candidate for office. I mean, just you name it, it's on his resume. But Steve Laffey, his website, SteveLaffey.com, Laffey. Steve Laffey. Good morning, sir, and I guess I'll just have to say Happy New Year.
Happy New Year, Jimmy. Yes, it's been a long time because even before we had an extra week, I wasn't on the 15th with you because whatever people are doing out there, don't get on the ladder is what I'll just say to people. Don't get on the ladder. Stay off the ladders.
I always stay off ladders, and I have a step ladder at the house, but I make sure I don't have a ladder because goodness knows what can happen. But you are recovering well from your, let's call it the ladder incident.
Yes, very well, due to the amazing guy with some lasers up here on Vermont Street. So we can go into that later, you and I just talking about it. But it just, amazing. But so many things to talk about. I mean, in fact, your last caller, Jack, who called in, really, I think, brought up an extremely important topic. But, we have to look back at the past, the present, the future, what we're going to do with the Republican Party if there's going to be one. So I'll let you take it away. But Jack's points, as far as thinking this through, people are very frustrated.
We'll kind of pitch back and forth here because Liz Cheney up in Wyoming, she's their one representative, so she is the only person representing the entire state. She's decided she's going to come out for the impeachment of President Trump. And I look at that, and just because of her last name is Cheney, it just is a reminder to me that no matter who is the president of the United States of America, Republican or Democrat, there are elite families with fancy names and a lot of ties that they want the status quo. And the status quo is entanglements in foreign wars. The status quo is heavy spending. All of you can name all these issues that Republicans often campaign and say, we're going to fix that. But the reality is people like Liz Cheney and these established names on the Republican and Democrat side, Steve, they want the status quo. They want they don't want disruption. They want a campaign saying one thing, but do something opposite when they get in office.
Well, it's true, you think about the election cycles and where the American people are, and you have to ask yourself: is it just about name recognition? How does Liz Cheney, win in Hawaii? I don't have no understanding of that. How did Chafee win in Rhode Island? How did the Kennedys finally lost the race for the first time ever in Massachusetts? So, but the real problem, and I want to address Jack, who just called in, is that if we're going to have an argument about personalities, if it's about Donald Trump, Republicans are going to continue to lose. Listen, Donald Trump is leaving office. He promised a balanced budget. This is the issue. We have the biggest spending spree, bigger than Obama. And people like Jack, or people who do TV shows on Fox, or people around the country, all I think except for me, say, oh, that's okay. We were trying to get growth. People like Pence, Cotton, Rubio, even my great friend Toomey out of Pennsylvania, who voted for all the stimulus of $8 trillion back in March. All of the senators. The president wanted even more money. This isn't a Republican issue, so if we keep it on the Republican issues, this wouldn't have happened if people had taken my advice to push the president. Where are the manufacturing jobs out of China? I'm going to give you a statistic, by the way, the complete failure of President Trump and the Republicans who talk about China on China. Over 4 years, the trade deficit with China got worse. It went from $254 billion per year, and as of last November 11th, it was $287 billion a year. So I just gave people two issues that we all care about, that I made a movie about that was well received, that people who watch it, I totally get it, Republicans. These are the two issues we should be doing. Where the hell are we? What happened? I mean, let's go to these issues and not to the president. Listen, impeaching the president by the Democrats is a joke. They never should have done it the first time. Now trying it the second time will actually only help President Trump, right? It doesn't hurt President Trump to get impeached the second time. His people will be about him. But we need to change the discourse. And people, maybe you've forgotten, I am the only living or dead elected Republican since Abe Lincoln to be attacked by the National Republican Party when I ran for higher office. My book, Primary Mistake, tells everybody what the issue should be. But for the last 4 years, we didn't do the issues. Did we build a wall against Mexico? Did Mexico pay for it? Where was the tariff on Mexico? And by the way, just take like one issue like manufacturing of drugs. Are they made in America today? Did the bill pass Congress and House that over the next 3 years, 2 years, 3 months, that 75% of all drugs that Americans use should be made at least in North America? That didn't pass, did it, Jimmy? Tom Cotton talked about it. I saw him talk about it every week. Boop, 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 boop. I saw Marco Rubio talk about it. Boop, 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 boop. They just talk. So the truth, Jack's right. Maybe the Republican Party should go away unless we're going to do issues. And the issues are, however you want to define it, a strong national defense so that we can live peacefully, the rule of law, property rights are totally enforced. By the way, where was the president and the Republican Congress in March telling people they didn't have to pay rent? That was Mr. Scott out of Florida who started that off. A United States senator said maybe people shouldn't pay their rent. How does that help property rights or help capitalism in the future? How does that not play into the hand of Democrats? So in March, and I sent you over a graph, the trade-weighted dollar is down 13% since March. Commodity prices are way up. And who gets hurt? The middle class. Who gets rich? The people who have money in stocks. Take a third issue, Jimmy. What does Jack want to do about the Federal Reserve Board? The Federal Reserve Board, the president leaves 2 people he didn't appoint. Who do you think Biden's going to appoint? People that look like Stephanie Kelton, the monetary people, modern monetary theory people. That's who he's going to appoint. Why did the president leave him vacant? Like what? Did he not know he was the president? I mean, all of it gets summed up by the meeting, literally it's a unique part. And if you haven't listened to the hour-long meeting of the conference call President Trump had with the Secretary of State, Brad Raffensperger, you need to listen to it for 1 hour. And it sums up everything about America right now as far as what's going on. 1, the president, to his defense, never, ever suggested that Secretary of State Brad Raffensperger do anything illegal. But even the Wall Street Journal has a headline where Trump was pressuring as if he was trying to do something illegal, like the former governor of Illinois did, right, to get a Senate person in. He was trying to he wasn't. The President Trump astutely says, hey, it's late in the game. We can get 400,000 votes, but we really only need 12. I need you to get 12, legally 12. But then the second part of the meeting, of the whole thing, is that 1, the president is 4 weeks late in doing this. He's doing it 3 days in front of the vote. 2, when you go into a meeting, like I've been in meetings, and you bring in someone as qualified as Cleta Mitchell, who I know, the partner at Foley and Ladner, the best election lawyer in the world, the best one, you just let her talk. He interrupts her continuously. She never gets out to the Secretary of State what needs to happen in 24 hours, which is matching up signatures, because the president, Trump, keeps interrupting her. When you go into a meeting like this, Jimmy, if I was president, it'd be like, hey, I've got Cleta Mitchell with me. Cleta, would you tell Secretary of State Brad what we need to do? And let it fly. And at the end of the meeting should have ended with Cleta Mitchell being on Air Force 1, 2, or 3 and landing in Georgia to get this done in 24 hours. And it never happens. And it shows you that the president doesn't plan. And this was the real problem. So let's forget the president. He's not going to be the president. Let's move on to issues. And I want to leave you with before. I want to be clear. The people who, this is where Jack should be upset if he's really a Republican. The people who in March decided that that it was 1880 and we didn't have unemployment insurance, we didn't have food stamps, we didn't have aid to families with or dependent children, we didn't have unemployment insurance around the states, and we were just going to start all over again to help people, they all should be thrown out of office. Jack's, if he thinks that, he's right. Rubio, Cotton, all of them. Pence, by the way. Did Pence just figure out the president would throw him under the bus at the end? By the way, the worst of the bunch is Mick Mulvaney, who resigned after this riot, right, this terrible thing that happened, and said on TV that the president has changed. He covered for the president about budget deficits as the budget director when he was a guy who tried to stop all the spending when he was a congressman. They did it for power. They got off issues. And while the president did a wonderful job of attracting the people you see in my movie to the party, we didn't push the president on issues that he said he would do. So it's partially our fault and partially the president for not following through, because he should have won 49 states like Reagan. It should have been easy. And yet all he had to do was be normal. That's all he had to do, Jimmy.
Laffey.com, Laffey. Steve, let's talk about it. Right before the holiday season, towards the end of our time in 2020, we talked about the stimulus package that happened in March, April, or whatever that happened midsummer. We have another one. I keep getting emails from my bank and everybody else saying, we got PPP money available for you. And you're talking about the value of the dollar and how it has crashed since that first stimulus. What's your prognosis here? We have another stimulus. We have a lot of other businesses that are going to go back for a second round of PPP money. Probably some more checks showing up in people's bank accounts, and everybody says, "Oh, that's wonderful. Our kids and grandkids will be paying for that little package that you're going to get in your bank account." Give me your thoughts. So the disaster of the first stimulus, and now we have a second one, sir.
Yes, and now you see some of the rats fleeing the ship. For example, there's six people who are going to run for president in the U.S. Senate who were not for the stimulus the second time around, right? What are their names? I just said their names. We know who they are. They're Ted Cruz and so forth. But then the president makes it worse. When they finally get through the $600 thing, the president does the worst thing he can do for those 2 seats in Georgia. He puts 2 conservative senators in Georgia on the spot because he wants $2,000 more per person. And they have to say, or don't have to say, because I would have said stick it. I would have said no, I'm against it. But think about that election in Georgia. Well, it only took what, 10,000 people in Georgia to do 2 things: not vote Republican over 2 issues. One, and the corollary is Arizona with John McCain. If you keep insulting the Republican governor of Georgia, if you kept insulting me in Cranston, even Cranston around where I was the mayor, even now, you would lose several thousand votes in a medium-sized city. In Georgia, 10,000 people at least didn't show. I've said this about Cory Gardner. When you cross the line, some people will say to Mr. Trump, I like Mr. Kemp, the governor. I'm not voting for Trump. And then when the $2,000 thing came over and the senators said they were for it, there had to be at least 10,000 people saying, I'm not voting for that. I would have been one of them. So it was bad politics. But now what we're going to see, because we've lost, is we're going to see more of this. The unemployment rate in America is like 6.7%. Who in their right mind thought up in December to send more checks to people? And then you talked about the PPP. Let's get at it. The PPP has at least 70,000 cases of corruption, where it seems like at the IRS they've got 12 people handling 500 cases. Yesterday's Colorado reported that in the state, that the primary thing that's going on in the state unemployment rolls, because people self-reported for claiming unemployment, is massive fraud. So there's massive fraud throughout the country. Who is it helping? Law firms who took the PPP who didn't need it made an extra $56,000 per legal partner probably. That's a crime. And yet we're for more of it. So if you want to see the middle class really get destroyed, go back to 1971-72. This morning, the CPI came out at 0.4. I'm not saying it's going to be 0.4 every month, but 0.4 times 12 looking forward is like 5.5% if you annualize it. So what are we really going to do? When we didn't solve these issues over 4 years at all, we made them worse. What are we really going to do? Because when my movie clearly states that when we cross what we really borrowed, not the $26.5 trillion in debt that we have, but it's roughly now $20 trillion that we actually borrow, we are at the point of no return. There's no return. And so the inequality of wealth got worse. And now what are they going to do about it? They're going to try to tax everybody out of it, rather than give people a fair tax or a 999 plan. All these things could have been done when we had both sides of the house, like repeal and replace. And they didn't happen. So now we've got at least 2 years of total disaster. And if the Republican Party wants to reunite, it will be with people who were not part of that last process. It'll be with the Jacks, the Jimmy Lakeys, the Steve Laffeys who refuse to go along. And there's millions of us. You can like Donald Trump for some of the things he did. The judges, some of the regulation went away. Of course, most of that was by edict, and it'll be put back in. That's why it has to be, if someone's a Republican president, by legislation. Not by presidential. Obama did this. We hated it. The president did it. People said, oh, it's great. It's not great. It needs to be brought in front of Congress, both houses, And what, like I did as Cranston mayor, is you force people to change their votes. You make it so unpopular. The 999 plan could have been so popular for the president because people would have had to vote for it because people in America on both sides of the aisles loved it. But we didn't do any of it.
Absolutely correct about the executive orders that presidents get into in all their base. The Democrats did it with Obama, and Obama's legacy was pulled out from underneath him because a lot of his actions were done not by legislation but by executive order. President Trump has done a lot of things through executive order. We thought, oh, that's wonderful. It's not going to last. It's going to everything will go back into place because it has to be done through the hallowed halls of Congress. But we seem to have forgotten that in America. Steve, I'm almost out of time. I appreciate you coming on. I'm glad you're recovering quickly, and stay off the...
Yeah. I love you, buddy. So great to see you back. I listened every morning for you coming back, and I'll keep the rest of it on. God bless you. And that's it for Jimmy Lakey today. He's a wonderful man. Yes, if anybody's listening, I did fall off a ladder, and if you live anywhere near Fort Collins, there's a guy with this Rolfing, wonderful guy, Chris Rolfing, 212 Restoration, 212 Wellness, who in a miracle has made me much better. But my days of weed whacking and replicating my lower middle class upbringing of mowing my own lawn, they're over. Someone else is doing it. But to leave you with this, if indeed we don't unite as Republicans around issues, President Trump's gone. Forget about it. The rats will always leave the ship. The worst of the bunch, quite frankly, even though Rick Santorum in the Wall Street Journal today tries to prop up Mike Pence, was Mike Pence. Mike Pence changed his mind about budget deficits to have power as vice president. He should have resigned over it, or at least come out and spoke against it, or at least convinced the president. So that meeting, I would encourage you, go somewhere. You can listen to the 1 hour meeting. You will never hear this again, probably. It probably was purposely leaked. But you can hear the president of the United States conduct a terrible meeting. He's late by 4 weeks. He interrupts his own people who are quality people that he brings with him, which is amazing. And you can, he insults, by the way, I didn't say this on the radio, but the president insults the Secretary of State of Georgia. At least his name is Brad Raffensperger. And he insults the other guy with him, who is the Ryan Germany, the general counsel who's in charge of that election stuff down in Georgia. He insults them over and over again. And for the life of me, I have never understood how badly people want power or to kowtow to people with power, which is probably why I'm still sitting here and not in office. I've been in meetings, and the one that happened with a union leader about the crossing guards, that brought in the brother, a guy who was banned under the Clinton administration from being involved in any kind of union activities for the international brotherhoods, and he came in and insulted me. And so it's a story I tell sometimes when I'm not talking publicly, because I can't really say what was said. But that meeting lasted about 15 seconds after he insulted me, because I got in his face so hard and told him exactly what I thought about what he had just said. He told me, Mayor, we're just in here to set you straight on a couple of things. And I said, let me set you, blobbity bluff, straight. I'm firing these, I'm doing this, I'm doing that. I don't care what you think, et cetera, et cetera. I'm paraphrasing. And then that meeting was over. This guy, Brad Raffensperger, was insulted at least 6 times on the tape, totally insulted by the president. And instead of saying, no, President, you're wrong, he should have said, Mr. President, he should have just let him have it. He would have been a hero. Instead, he sort of took it. And in life, that's not what you do. And that's not what Pence and Cotton, all these people are just talkers. They don't do anything. And think about this. I said it before and I'll say it again. I give you 100 issues like this. But after the pandemic caused by Communist China was in a phase 1 trade deal with the United States of America, and they have kept less than half of their agreement. And nobody seems to care. The manufacturing jobs that were supposed to come home, in fact, the president at one time said the jobs have to come home, get out of China now, a couple of years ago. Nobody did. And Jimmy's right that the power structure will come back. And that's what the president was supposed to fight against. But his lack of success, because I truly don't understand why he didn't want to make these changes. Why he didn't want to bring the Congress? Better to bring it to Congress and lose and be on the track record about these things. But if we have a Republican president who's interested in sending an extra $2,000 out to everybody willy-nilly, that's madness. The first part was madness. And the first part increased the Federal Reserve's balance sheet. They gave them $400 billion. They levered it up 10-1. It's $400 billion that it went up by. I'm sorry, $4 trillion that it went up by. I can't even say trillion anymore. I made a movie about it. And now the balance sheet's like $8 trillion. The gig is up. And the people who get worse, if you're old enough like me to remember the 1970s, the people who got hurt the worst were my dad. The people who got worse were the people's dads over in Eden Park, whose dads worked in manufacturing. It's always inflation and the devaluing of the dollar or whatever currency that tears apart the middle class. Listen, I know how to make money in this stuff. And I've been blessed to be able to do it. But the average person is just staying ahead. And this stuff in inflation and what's about to happen, what has happened under Republican president, destroys the fabric of society. And it did in the 70s, and we got it back with Reagan, and now it's destroyed again. And I don't know how we get it back. But we need outsiders, people like me, to be in office, I believe. People who have not been part of this process. Because when somebody runs who defended all these things in 2024, and these 6 people will run, when one person shows up, someone like me, and says, no, and starts pointing what I just pointed out in the last 25 minutes, they'll have no chair to sit on. There's no defense for what they did. And yet they did it.